credit. So what is a credit score? A credit score is a number that tells lenders how profitable it is likely to be if they lend to you. It is not a measure of financial responsibility, though it often reflects that. It is not a measure of how much money you have, though it may also reflect that. An extremely rich person can have a terrible credit score, and an extremely poor person can have a fantastic credit score. It all depends on the individual pieces that make up your credit score. So what does the number actually mean? A credit score ranges from 300 to 850, with the higher being better. If your credit is below 630, it's really unlikely that anyone will lend to you at all. 630 to 689 is fair credit, but you're going to have higher interest rates. A good credit score is 690 to 719. And the excellent range is 720 and above. What makes up a credit score? Before we get into what actually makes the numbers of a credit score, let's talk about the different payments that do or do not affect your credit score. Not all payments that you make are going to affect your credit score. The positive things that make up your payment history are only about things that you have borrowed. So that includes credit cards, student loans, car payments, personal loans. Anytime that you have gone to a lender and you have said, I would like access to money that I do not have. These are called lines of credit, and lines of credit tend to fall into two kinds of categories. The first category is called revolving credit, and this is generally just credit cards. There are some other types of revolving credit, but they're less common. Revolving credit is when you have access to a certain amount and you can replenish that amount. So if you have a $500 credit card, that means that at any time you can borrow $500. If you then pay off that $500, you have access to that $500 again. That's what it means by revolving. You have access to it again in a circular motion. The other type is installment, and this includes almost everything else. Student loans, car loans, personal loans, basically any of those are installment because once you have paid back part of it, you cannot then re-borrow that. Now, there are plenty of payments that you make every month that won't affect your credit positively, but they can affect your credit negatively. Examples might be medical bills, rent, utilities, court fees. Any of these things can negatively affect your credit if they go to collections, or if the company or person that you owe money to chooses to report that to the credit bureau. Knowing all of that, what actually makes up the credit score? We actually know a lot more about it than we used to, and things have changed slightly. So some of the things in here you might go, that's not what I was told, and that's probably because the things have changed. 35% of your credit score is made up of your payment history, specifically to the loans that we talked about. So every positive payment, that's a good mark. Every negative payment, that's a bad mark. The next section is 30% of your credit score is made up of credit utilization. Credit utilization means the percentage of your credit that you are actually using. And this is specifically about revolving debts, so mostly credit cards. The less you use, the better. People say to keep it around 30%, and that's a good number if you have to use it. But if you can use none of it, use none of it. 15% of your credit score is made up of the length of your credit history. Now, this is really important because a lot of people don't realize that they need to start working on their credit early. And they also don't realize that once you have a card, even if you're not using it, you should not cancel it. Its existence increases your average age, and that's a positive thing. The next 10% is on new credit. This is specifically marks based on whether you've applied for credit or not recently. Applying for a lot of credit in a specific amount of time can be a pretty big red flag to lenders that you might be looking for money because you're having troubles. Applying for credit does negatively impact your credit score, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's usually only going to be a few points. The last 10% is on credit mix, so this is the specific types of loan that you have. It's better to have a variety, but since this is only 10%, it's not a huge deal if you don't have too much variety. But it shows to lenders that you can handle different types of lending. So let's go over a few misconceptions. The first is that you do not necessarily start with a good credit score. People don't start with a perfect score and then go down. You start with no score, which for a lot of lenders is exactly as bad as a bad score. This means that if you put off building credit until you need it, you're not going to be able to use it when you need it. So the earlier the better. Next is you don't actually need to use your credit card. A lot of people think that you need to consistently be using your credit card in order for you to get positive marks on your card, but this is old information and you no longer need to use it. You just have to keep it open. Now, a lot of credit card companies will close your card if you're not using it, so a lot of people will recommend that you put something small on there, such as a Netflix payment or a subscription to my Patreon account, and then you pay that off immediately after so you don't accrue any interest. You're only going to accrue interest if you wait. If you have an old card you're no longer using, don't close the card. Unless it has some sort of yearly fee, monthly fee, there's no benefit to closing your card. In fact, it will likely hurt your credit score because you are lowering the average age of your account. A lot of people get student loans when they aren't really thinking strongly about financials. This means that when they're starting to look closer at their financials, they are very scared of their student loans. But the good news is that student loans are not going to hurt your credit unless you're not paying them on time. They actually help your credit because they are an additional type of loan. But as always, you don't want to have any negative marks, so make sure that you're paying your loans on time. Speaking of negative marks, the negative items do not stay on your credit forever. Negative marks stay on your credit for up to 7 years. In the case of bankruptcy, they can stay for up to 10 years. Bankruptcy is not necessarily a bad thing. It is going to hurt your credit score. Things that hurt your credit score are not always a bad thing. They can be something to help you later. For example, bankruptcy can be a viable option if you don't have any other way to get out of things. A credit score is a lot like insurance. It only matters when you need it. So if you're in a place where you don't need any new lines of credit and you're going to be doing something that's going to have a negative impact on your credit score, that can be just fine. Just plan accordingly, and if you need financial advice, talk to a professional. The last misconception is that your credit score is not going to be the same for every place that pulls it. There are 3 different locations where credit is reported, and they will not always have the same numbers. Those small differences are probably not going to make that big of an impact. And the last section that I'm going to talk about is what to do to build up credit when you don't have any. Start by getting yourself a credit card. Now, I know that sounds scary, but the most important thing to remember is you do not need to use your credit card. If you go to get a credit card and they have some sort of yearly fee, don't get that credit card. I recommend talking to your local credit union, as they are nonprofit organizations who are usually looking for your best interest. My credit union is fantastic because they helped me a lot throughout the years in getting many different kinds of loans. And the best thing about them is that they are very committed to not lending me things that I cannot afford. While it can be really frustrating to be declined, it was ultimately the best thing for me. Next is make your payments on time. Now this applies to your loans, but it's also very important for the other things that I mentioned that could negatively impact you if they go to collections. Medical bills are huge in negatively impacting people's credit without them even realizing. Collections agencies basically exist just to try to get anything from you, so a lot of times they are willing to make a deal and settle your account. So don't be scared of them. Talk to them, tell them what you can afford, and they will often try to meet it. Start tracking your credit today. There are lots of different ways that you can track your credit, but my personal favorite is the app called NerdWallet. There's also Credit Karma and Credit Sesame, which are also great. And tracking your credit through these apps is not going to negatively impact your credit score because it's not a hard pull on your credit. But remember, these apps exist to make money, so they will try to sell you things. Do not buy things that you can't afford, which includes new lines of credit. Don't open up a new credit card just because they say it's going to help you. My app advises that I should have 23 lines of credit. I should not have 23 credit cards. That is a lot of temptation that I personally do not need. Don't go overboard in building your credit. Start it slow. You don't need to get 5 credit cards. You don't need to get 2 car loans. You don't need to get a brand new car. Take it slow, let it build over time, and remember, be careful. Finances can be life or death, so be cautious. Just because you have that high limit on your credit card does not mean you need to use all of it. That's all I have. Feel free to ask me questions or give suggestions of future financial advice videos you'd like to see. I'll put a link in the description to the financial advice group that I have on Facebook if you'd like to join. And as always, thank you for watching. Feel free to subscribe. Bye! Wow, I was not even recording.